Samantha Markle, Meghan's half-sister, is said to have exposed something so consequential it could shake the monarchy. An anonymous figure, dubbed DL, is whispered to be a surrogate with hospital bills and non-disclosure agreements in hand. The rhetoric is relentless. The stakes are pitched as constitutional. The proof, at least in the public domain, remains elusive. This matters now because royal narratives once moved at the pace of court circulars and state occasions. Today, they ricochet hour by hour through platforms calibrated to reward the most shareable version of events, not the most supportable one. In that world, silence becomes suspicion, ambiguity becomes accusation, and tradition is treated as if it were law. For an institution that prefers to let time tell its stories, and for a couple who once left frontline royal life seeking control over theirs, the terrain is treacherous. So let's take a clear-eyed tour through the claims, the record, and the reasons these controversies keep resurfacing with greater heat than light. We'll trace how a line from a 2021 interview, "I grew up as an only child," fed a years-long legal battle, and why that fight ended not with a dramatic courtroom confrontation, but with a dismissal. We'll examine what DL is alleged to have said and test those allegations against what we know about surrogacy law in the UK and California, about how the line of succession functions in practice, and about the difference between ritual and requirement when it comes to royal births. We'll revisit the timeline of Archie's arrival on May 6, 2019, the decision to introduce him 2 days later at Windsor rather than outside the Lindo wing, and the small communications wrinkle, the palace announcing labour just before confirming birth, that seeded vast fields of speculation. We'll look at the 2021 birth of Lilibet in Santa Barbara, the several-week lag before her name appeared on the public line of succession, and why administrative edits to a birth certificate became the stuff of tabloid and Twitter archaeology. We'll parse the folding bump clip that refuses to die and explore why visual anomalies outcompete sober clarifications in a digital feed. And we'll place all of this within the bigger frame. A 1,000-year-old monarchy communicating in an environment that punishes nuance, a couple who have chosen litigation over jousting with every rumour, and an audience of royal watchers, curious, critical, and often exasperated, trying to navigate the difference between optics and obligations. To understand why Samantha Markle's recurring criticisms travel so far, you have to start with how personal narratives harden into public battlegrounds. Meghan and Samantha share a father, Thomas Markle SR, but they were raised largely apart. Meghan has described the feeling of growing up primarily without siblings in the home. In her 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey, she said, "I grew up as an only child," a line that became totemic for her supporters and infuriating to Samantha, who argued that it erased their bond. The disagreement didn't just fuel headlines, it entered court. In 2022, Samantha filed a defamation suit in Florida, which was dismissed in 2023 and again after amendment in 2024. A judge determined that Meghan's statement was a subjective opinion about her own upbringing, not a provably false factual assertion. Courts do not arbitrate family feelings, they assess whether statement meets legal thresholds. In this case, it did not. The dismissals don't make one sister right and the other wrong about the emotional history. They do matter, however, for royal watchers weighing claims of exposure and proof. An allegation that survives only on social media and not in a legal forum tells you something about its evidentiary weight. That distinction between what resonates and what can be proven becomes even more important with the new twist making the rounds. An anonymous woman known only as DL, who purports to have been a surrogate for the Sussex children and who is said to hold hospital bills, medical records, and an airtight NDA. If that sounds dramatic, it's designed to. If it remains unverified, that's not incidental. It is the entire point. As of this writing, no mainstream outlet has authenticated such documentation. No sworn filing has placed these receipts before a judge. No official body has substantiated the underlying claim. Many royal watchers have asked why, if there is nothing to hide, a simple denial or even a DNA test isn't issued to end the speculation in a day. The answer sits at the intersection of law, ethics, and media mechanics. Medical privacy is a baseline right. There is no legal or royal protocol that compels a DNA test to satisfy online conspiracy. Demands to furnish genetic proof on command invert the burden of proof and create a precedent no public figure could live under without consenting to perpetual intrusion. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence is not a legal statute, it's a mental model. Anonymous testimony plus documents no one outside a commentary channel has seen does not clear that bar. If such documents existed in a form that could survive judicial scrutiny, they could be filed, discovery could proceed, and a court could examine their provenance. That hasn't happened. A refrain you've likely heard on commentary channels, "Silence is the loudest confession," is rhetorically effective because it appeals to impatience. It isn't how institutions or legal strategies work. The late Queen's preference for never complain, never explain reflected an era when a slow public record insulated the palace from most day-to-day storms. Harry and Meghan, to their critics' chagrin and their supporters' approval, chose a different model: direct narrative control through an opera sit-down in March 2021 and the Harry and Meghan Netflix series in December 2022. But their public posture does not obligate them to contest every rumor, particularly those involving medical matters. When something is litigable, copyright, privacy, hacking, the Sussexes have shown they will go to court. In 2021, Meghan won a landmark summary judgment against Associated Newspapers over the publication of a private letter to her father, a rare outcome that bypassed trial because the case was so clear. In December 2023, Princeharry secured £140,600 in damages against Mirror Group newspapers for unlawful information gathering, with further proceedings ongoing against other publishers. Those victories explain a strategic focus: address documented newsroom misconduct in forums that value evidence and precedent, rather than feed an algorithm with reactive denials that change no minds and cede yet more privacy. Silence in that frame is boundary and triage, not confession. Still, it would be naive to pretend that communications decisions carry no consequences. The modern ritual of royal births centers on optics, and optics are powerful. For centuries, royal children were born in private residences, and until 1948, the Home Secretary attended to verify legitimacy. That practice ended without catastrophe. The new ritual emerged with the hospital step photocall, indelibly etched by Princess Diana's appearances outside the Lindo wing in 1982 with Prince William, and in 1984 with Prince Harry. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, repeated the tableau in 2013, 2015, and 2018 with George, Charlotte, and Louis, producing a triptych of polished reassurance. When the Duke and Duchess of Sussex decided in May 2019 to introduce Archie at St George's Hall in Windsor 2 days after his birth, rather than on the steps of St Mary's Hospital, they broke no rule and committed no offence. They made a choice that many felt cast aside a comforting pageant. The choice carried risk, because predictability is the monarchic sedative. Then came the timeline wrinkle. On the day Archie was born, May 6, 2019, the palace announced that the Duchess was in labour. Shortly thereafter, they confirmed the birth had already taken place earlier that morning, a sequence that made sense if viewed as a privacy-protective delay but appeared, to a public trained to parse palatial precision, like a contradiction. Was labour ongoing or over? Why not wait and simply issue a clear post-birth statement? In a high-pressure environment, the miscue was small. In a conspiracy-minded ecosystem, it was oxygen. The publication of Archie's birth certificate on May 17, 2019, naming Portland Hospital as the place of birth, should have closed one lane of rumour. Instead, attention shifted to forms. An administrative edit later, that the mother's name was restyled from Rachel Meghan Markle to Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, became a fresh hook for speculation about who initiated the change and why. The palace characterised it as a standard adjustment. Critics read it as a cover-up tell. Bureaucratic housekeeping rarely prevails over narrative hunger. Lilibet's birth 2 years later, June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, announced publicly on June 6, followed a similar pattern, clear on the essentials, contested in the gaps. A summer lag before Lilibet's name appeared on the public line of succession sparked commentary that something was being hidden, even though similar updates have historically moved at an unhurried pace. By March 2023, the couple announced their daughter's christening in California and confirmed the use of Princess Lilibet Diana, consistent with the 1917 letters patent granting HRH Prince-Princess styles to children of the sovereign's sons, a status activated for the Sussex children after the late Queen's death. None of this quelled the allegation cycles, because in the realm of viral content, adjustments and formalities don't compete well with a single tantalizing visual or the lure of a hidden document. The most persistent visual artifact is the so-called folding bump clip footage of Meghan's dress creasing as she sits, captured at an angle that many viewers interpreted as incompatible with late-stage pregnancy. It refuses to die because it offers something text cannot, the sensation of seeing with one's own eyes. Fact-checkers and mainstream outlets have called the clip misleading, pointing to fabric structure, camera perspective, and motion as sufficient explanations for an odd-looking crease. That doesn't matter to those who have already concluded that the video confirms synthetic motherhood. People remember emotionally charged images, not footnotes. If you're determined to read duplicity into every frame, the crease is a revelation. If you're looking for standards that would survive a court or even a newsroom review, it's an illusion. The constitutional bogeyman that undisclosed surrogacy would kneecap the line of succession is compelling because it invokes the Crown's deepest anxieties. legitimacy, lineage, and continuity. It also collapses under examination. The succession to the Crown Act 2013 modernized aspects of the order, ending male preference primogeniture, updating marriage restrictions, but did not impose a birth method requirement. UK law on surrogacy is clear in its own domain. The surrogate is the legal mother at birth, with parenthood transferred via parental order post-delivery when statutory criteria are met. California, where Lilibet was born, is one of the most surrogacy-friendly jurisdictions in the US, regularly issuing pre-birth orders that streamline parentage on the day of delivery. None of these frameworks, however, intersect with an unwritten rule disqualifying children from the royal line because of how they arrived. The practical expression of legitimacy in the British system is the public line of succession, maintained by royal communications and mirrored by official resources. Archie and Lilibet are on it. If a genuine legal disqualifier existed, we would not need to learn about it via a YouTube cliffhanger. We would see formal statements, adjusted listings, perhaps even parliamentary clarification. The signal would be unambiguous. Public perception, of course, is not a courtroom. It's a weather system. YouGov tracking in the UK since 2020 shows negative trends in favourability for both Meghan and Harry, with steeper declines after major narrative moments like the Oprah interview and the release of Harry's memoir, Spare. American sentiment has been more mixed, sometimes buoyed by sympathetic coverage, sometimes cooled by oversaturation. The Netflix series in December 2022 generated substantial global viewing, a fact that simultaneously affirmed the couple's star power and fed the suspicion among detractors that every silence is strategy and every strategy is concealment. When people are primed to interpret choices as choreography, even normal decisions, like choosing to prioritize maternal privacy over an historic photo op, feel sinister. It's essential then to examine how commentary videos manufacture certainty. The transcript driving this latest cycle relies on familiar rhetorical maneuvers. It offers a false binary. Either Meghan's story is wholly true, or she's the architect of a false empire, erasing the grey scalings of lived experience. It shifts the burden of proof with performative. Simple DNA test could bury this, which, like most simple solutions to complex problems, sounds satisfying precisely because they sidestep law and ethics. It invokes secrecy, NDAs, hidden clinics, backrooms, to promise drama while keeping proof out of reach, turning absence into aesthetic. It launders authority with vague quantification, polls brutally shifting, without dates or questions, because numbers without provenance still sound like science. And it beats the drum of silence equals suspicion to repurpose restraint as guilt, knowing how effective that formula can be in a media landscape allergic to pauses. Ethics matter here, not as rhetoric but as guardrails. Whatever one thinks of the Sussexes' media strategy, speculation about the biological origins of minors crosses a line. It creates a digital trail with real-world consequences. It invites invasive demands that no family should meet. Major platforms prohibit doxing and direct harassment of children, but grey-zone content, insinuations, visual analyses, repeated DNA calls slips through. Royal watching, at its best, is a study of institutions, history, and the strange intersection where public duty meets private life. It does not require turning children into content. None of this absolves the Sussex communications machine from critique. If the goal is to reduce friction, there are tactical improvements available. Anticipating ritual-sensitive moments matters. The Labour-then-birth sequencing in 2019, whatever the intent, was a foreseeable confusion. In an environment where tiny mismatches mushroom, clarity is not a luxury. When allegations arise about private medical matters, a standardized holding line, "This claim is false, we will not be sharing medical information," can draw a boundary without ceding the premise that a family must open medical files to appease the internet. Leaning on third-party validators, the public succession list, court judgments, official registers, builds a record more durable than reactive statements. None of those moves will satisfy those committed to a theory, but they will reinforce the difference between a story and the record. The story must eventually meet. Consider, too, how precedent and ritual evolve. The late Queen's children were born at home. The Home Secretary's witness role ended in 1948. The Linda wing steps, for all their power as a symbol, are inventions of the television age, not articles of a constitution. Catherine's three-step appearances in 2013, 2015, and 2018 set a high-gloss standard that some viewers mistook for mandate. Meghan and Harry's decision to do it differently in 2019, and again in 2021, was a bet on redefining modern royal motherhood within personal boundaries. It was a reasonable bet and a risky one. In a world where ritual has been mistaken for requirement, breaking it looks like evasion, even when nothing is being evaded. Legal posture has become PR posture in ways both deliberate and inevitable. Meghan's summary judgment victory against Associated Newspapers in 2021 did more than vindicate a privacy claim. It signaled a strategy of fighting on terrain where evidence trumps innuendo. Prince Harry's 2023 win against Mirror Group newspapers did the same, establishing on the record that unlawful information gathering occurred and awarding six-figure damages. Meanwhile, Samantha Markle's defamation suit ended with dismissals, a reminder that not every exposure withstands the standards of a court. These outcomes form a quiet counter-narrative to the idea that they never deny anything or they can't prove their side. They are not denials shouted into a microphone, they are judgments entered onto the record. It's understandable that some royal watchers, exhausted by the churn, find the legal route unsatisfying. Courts are slow, content cycles are fast. But if you care about what can be known rather than what can be felt, the docket matters. For those who want to remain engaged without getting trapped in somebody else's dramaturgy, it helps to adopt a watcher's discipline. Ask who is speaking and what their incentives are. Distinguish between primary sources, birth registrations reported by reputable outlets from public records, royal, UK updates on the line of succession, court filings, and commentary that layers interpretation over snippets. When a video promises new receipts, look for provenance. Are documents shown, legible, date-stamped, and authenticated by independent reporting? If not, you may be dealing with allegation as performance. Be wary of the comforts of certainty. The simplest explanation that fits the known facts, Occam's razor, is often the least shareable. A dress crease is a dress crease. A delayed listing is a bureaucratic lag. An administrative name edit is an administrative name edit. Those sentences do not light up a feed. They do, however, keep you tethered to the earth. It's equally important to recognize why these cycles keep finding purchase. The monarchy runs on trust and continuity. Allegations that imply scripted lives and manufactured stories corrode both. The Sussexes' direct-to-camera narrative strategy, Oprah in March 2021, Netflix in December 2022, won them extraordinary latitude to tell their version of events, but also made them the protagonists of an ongoing drama. In that drama, every moment of restraint is interpreted as strategy and every strategy as concealment. Critics find in this a confirmation of duplicity. Supporters see a family defending itself from a historically toxic press. Both sides converge on a single outcome. The conversation keeps going. For the crown, the risks are broader than any one couple's reputation. A monarchy that appears to wobble in the winds of rumor invites cynicism, not just toward its pageantry, but toward its constitutional role. The paradox is that scandal both damages and sustains interest. The oxygen is toxic, but it keeps the fire visible. After all this, what remains of the headline promise that Meghan Markle was left stunned after Samantha Markle exposed something earth-shaking? Not a judicial finding, not an official recalibration of the line of succession, not a mainstream investigative series putting named sources and authenticated documents on the record. What remains is a set of emotionally potent claims, a familiar family rupture, a new anonymous figure introduced into the narrative without verifiable support, and a chorus insisting that silence is confession. Against that, the public record stands plain. Archie's birth on May 6, 2019, recorded at Portland Hospital. Lilibet's birth on June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Both children's presence on the official line of succession. A 2023 christening announcement in which the family's spokesperson confirmed the use of princess for Lilibet. A 2021 court victory for Meghan over the unlawful publication of a private letter. A 2023 court victory for Harry over unlawful information gathering, and a pair of dismissals for Samantha's defamation claims. Those facts do not answer every question a curious public might have. They do establish a floor on which to stand while the wind howls. So where does that leave the royal watcher who wants to be engaged and critical, not credulous or cruel? It leaves you with choices. You can tune your feed to elevate analysts who label allegations as allegations, who cite court papers and official lists, who understand that rituals are not laws and that children are not content. You can resist the binary that demands total belief or total condemnation. You can separate optics from obligation, and you can keep a running ledger. Not of who wins a news cycle, but of which claims migrate from thumbnails to documents. In the long arc of royal history, truth rarely arrives with a flourish. It accumulates through filings, registers, and proclamations, through official lists updated without fanfare, through decisions that persist even after the cameras move on. If you must hold a single sentence in mind as the next wave of exposés lands, let it be this. The difference between a story and the record is not academic, it is everything. A story can be irresistible and wrong. The record can be dull and determinative. If a real constitutional issue ever emerged from this swirl, you would not learn about it first from a monologue over moody music. You would see it in the unmistakable signals of the British state. Until then, ask more of your sources than posture and provocation. Demand provenance, not performance. Accept that a family's refusal to turn their medical history into consumable proof is not the same thing as guilt. And keep your standards as high as your curiosity. The monarchy will endure its storms. That is one of the few things about it that has never changed. The question is whether we, as its watchers, can resist turning gusts into gospels. If there is a single through line to all of this, it is how quickly a ritual can be mistaken for a requirement, and how easily a deviation can be cast as a confession. That insight becomes clearer when you lay out the events of 2018 and 2019 with the care they deserved at the time. The Sussexes began their public life as a married couple in a blaze of optimism at St. George's Chapel on May 19, 2018. By October 15, 2018, on the eve of their Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Tonga tour, they announced they were expecting their first child. It was an announcement calculated for maximum goodwill. A young couple on a high-profile tour, a baby on the way, the promise of continuity. In February 2019, Meghan's New York baby shower became a target for paparazzi and a flashpoint for critics who dislike celebrity spectacle. For supporters, it felt like a normal moment of joy for a woman facing relentless press scrutiny. That tension, between star power and service, between privacy and performance, was present in every decision that followed. Archie's arrival on May 6, 2019, set up one of the most dissected half-hours in recent royal communications. The palace advised the public the Duchess was in labor. Soon after, a second announcement confirmed the baby had already been born earlier that morning. In an information climate less geared to instant suspicion, those two sentences would have passed as an understandable timing error or a choice to shield the first hours after birth from the cameras. Instead, the mismatch was seized as evidence that the public was not being told the real story, a phrase that now haunts nearly every Sussex headline. If you step back and look at the record that followed, the picture is plainer. On May 8, the child was introduced to the world in St. George's Hall at Windsor in a tightly controlled, brief appearance. On May 17, the birth certificate was published, recording Portland Hospital in London as the place of birth and Meghan Markle as the mother's name. If you have a mental model that treats the Lindo wing steps as a constitutional duty, this process feels slippery. If you remember that the Lindo ritual is a product of the television age, not a rule of law, the process looks like a modern couple asserting a measure of control without tearing up the rulebook. It is worth dwelling on Portland Hospital, because suspicion often thrives where knowledge is thin. Portland is a private London hospital with a long royal association. Sarah, Duchess of York, gave birth to both Princess Beatrice in 1988 and Princess Eugenie in 1990 there. Princess Eugenie chose Portland again for the birth of her son in 2021. The idea that a Sussex birth at Portland, rather than at St. Mary, is in itself suspicious collapses under that simple bit of history, but controversy is seldom rational. Within weeks, attention shifted from where Archie was born to how his parents managed his early milestones. The July 2019 christening at Windsor was private. Official photos, shot by Chris Allerton, were released after the fact. Godparents' names were not made public. Ethical royal watching does not require a christening live stream. Yet for a portion of the audience, this pattern, selective access, careful staging, and a refusal to repeat rituals like hospital steps, set the frame through which all future Sussex news would be read. They are hiding something. That frame shaped the reception of every subsequent story, including the couple's decision to step back from frontline royal duties in January 2020, their move to North America, their explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey on March 7, 2021, and their Netflix series in December 2022. It filtered how people processed the birth of Lilibet Diana on June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, an American birth in a hospital known for obstetric care, announced on June 6. It colored the minor bureaucratic delay before Lilibet's name appeared on the official public line of succession, a matter of weeks that in a normal communications environment would have merited no more than a sigh. It also permeated a separate media spat in June 2021 about the baby's name. Reports claimed the Queen had not been consulted about using the family nickname, Lilibet. Sussex representatives pushed back firmly, and according to their spokesperson's statements at the time, took legal advice. Whether you found that dust-up trivial or telling, it is a clear example of how, once a couple becomes a lightning rod, even a namming question can be pressed into the service of a sweeping indictment. By March 2023, the Sussexes' spokesperson announced their daughter had been christened at home in California and confirmed the use of Princess for Lilibet. That styling aligns with the 1917 letters patent, which grant HRH Prince Princess to the children of the sons of the sovereign. Those styles become available when the sovereign changes, in this case after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. When you look for the institutional signal instead of the influencer verdict, the signal is consistent. Archie and Lilibet are listed in the line of succession. Their titles, when used, are grounded in existing letters patent. Their births were recorded with locations that fit both familial and geographic logic. A constitutional system that wished to send a different message would not do so via rumor. It would adjust public lists, issue statements, and if necessary, seek parliamentary clarification. Nothing like that has happened. Parallel to the ceremonial life of the children, ran a ferocious media and legal campaign about the treatment of the Sussexes by the press. Meghan's 2021 privacy case against Associated Newspapers concluded with a rare summary judgment in her favor, sparing her a trial and securing an acknowledgement from the publisher that it had unlawfully published parts of a private letter to her father. Princeharry's 2023 trial against Mirror Group newspapers ended with the High Court finding that the publisher engaged in unlawful information gathering in a number of instances, awarding him £140,600 in damages. His separate cases against other newspaper publishers continue. For supporters, these cases validated the couple's core narrative, that they were subjected to press misconduct severe enough to warrant courtroom redress. For critics, the same cases were reframed as attempts to cow the press and pursue vendettas. The record is not ambiguous about the outcomes. Meghan won, Harry won, but outcomes do not eliminate animus. What they do is put something on the ledger that cannot be spun away by a viral clip. Facts reviewed by a judge, law applied, findings entered. Against these official dots stand a constellation of viral allegations, chief among them the claim that an anonymous woman, DL, was in fact a surrogate for one or both Sussex children and possesses hospital bills, medical records, and a non-disclosure agreement. The allegation travels far because it satisfies several conditions for digital wildfire. It is simple, it seems to explain discrepancies, it promises secret knowledge, and it reassigns the burden of proof. The last one matters most. Instead of asking the claimant to file a sworn affidavit, show provenance for documents, and allow cross-examination in a forum that punishes perjury, it asks the accused to breach their medical privacy to extinguish suspicion. That inversion is emotionally satisfying to those who feel deceived. It is also precisely the kind of trap intelligent public figures decline to step into.